Tomorrow, Monday, May 19th, 2026, at 8:30 in the morning, Erika Jayne walks into the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the Central District of California to face a civil jury trial over $25 million that her late ex-husband Tom Girardi's law firm allegedly spent on her and her entertainment company. No more delays, no more continuances. The court ordered it. The plaintiff is ready, and what happens in that courtroom will determine what happens to the rest of her life. 5 years. That is how long this has been moving toward the moment that arrives tomorrow morning. 5 years since the lawsuit was filed, 5 years of delays, postponements, settlement talks that collapsed, continuances that were granted and then revoked, a motion in limine hearing on April 29th, a final pretrial conference that the court conducted with the specific energy of a system that had been told there would be no more waiting. Tomorrow at 8:30 in the morning, Pacific time, a jury will be seated in Los Angeles and Erika Jayne will finally be made to answer for the $25 million. Before we go through what happens tomorrow and why it matters, we need to go through the full architecture of what the case is actually about. Because 5 years of coverage has produced a lot of noise around this lawsuit, and the noise has obscured some of the most specific and most damaging details of what the plaintiff is actually arguing. The lawsuit was filed in July 2021 by Alyssa D. Miller, the bankruptcy trustee appointed to manage the estate of Girardi Keese, Tom Girardi's now defunct law firm. Tom Girardi, as every viewer of this show knows, was convicted of wire fraud by a federal jury in August 2024, was sentenced to 87 months in federal prison in June 2025, and reported to federal custody in July 2025. He is currently incarcerated at 86 years old. The criminal case against Tom is closed. The civil case about where the money went is what starts tomorrow. The trustee's theory of the case begins with a specific number, $25,592,261.26. That is the documented total of payments that Girardi Keese made on behalf of Erika Jayne and her entertainment company, EJ Global LLC, between 2008 and 2020. The trustee's filing breaks this number into two categories. The first category is over $14 million in American Express charges, made directly by Erika on a card issued to her and billed to the firm. The second category is approximately $11 million in vendor payments made to third parties for Erika's benefit: the Glam Squad, the production companies, the costume designers, the private aviation charges, the various vendors who built and maintained the EJ Global Entertainment operation. The trustee's position is that all of it, every dollar, came from money that belonged to Tom Girardi's clients and that had no business flowing to his wife's pop music career. The trustee filed this lawsuit under the legal theory of fraudulent conveyance. Fraudulent conveyance law is one of the most powerful tools available in bankruptcy proceedings, and it is worth understanding precisely because Erika's defense is built on not understanding it, or at least on hoping that a jury will not understand it. Fraudulent conveyance law allows a bankruptcy trustee to recover money that was paid out of a bankrupt estate to a third party, even if that third party had no knowledge that the money was improperly transferred. Knowledge is not required. Benefit is sufficient. The law says, if you received money that came from a bankrupt estate, and you are not a good faith purchaser for value, you may be required to return it. Erika's defense, led by attorney Evan Borges, has consistently maintained that she had no knowledge of any wrongdoing. She has said she believed the law firm's payments were legitimate business expenses, that Tom told her EJ Global was a business asset, and that the firm's support of it was a standard business arrangement. She has said she did not know Tom was stealing. She has said she was devastated to learn the truth, that she had no visibility into its finances, and that she cannot be held responsible for her husband's crimes. The trustee's response to this defense is documented in the court filings and is the argument the jury will hear tomorrow. It goes like this: fraudulent conveyance does not require knowledge. What it requires is that the transfer be made without reasonably equivalent value, meaning that the bankrupt estate gave something and got nothing of equal value back. The law firm paid $25 million, and EJ Global gave the firm essentially nothing in return. There was no business relationship that generated income for the firm. There was no consulting contract, no service agreement, no revenue stream that flowed back from EJ Global to Girardi Keese in exchange for the money flowing out. The money went one direction, and the person whose lifestyle it funded was Erika Jayne. Now here's the development that broke 3 weeks ago and that changed the shape of what happens tomorrow in ways that the audience has not fully processed. The trustee sold the lawsuit. On April 27, 2026, it was confirmed that the bankruptcy estate, the entity that has been pursuing Erika for 5 years, sold the rights to this lawsuit to a third party called LHA Land LLC for $2 million. LHA Land LLC is the new plaintiff. They purchased the right to pursue Erika for the $25 million. The bankruptcy estate received $2 million immediately, which goes directly to Tom Girardi's victims. And LHA Land LLC, having paid $2 million for the right to collect $25 million, has every financial incentive in the world to see this trial through to a verdict. Ronald Richards, who has spent 5 years being the most public commentator on this case, described the sale as a significant development. "I've spent 5 years pursuing Erika Jayne to bring justice to the victims of her husband's fraud," he said. "This is a step forward." He characterized the $2 million received by the estate as meaningful relief for the victims, money that is in their hands now rather than waiting for a trial verdict that might be years away. And he noted that LHA Land LLC taking over the litigation removed any possibility that the trustee would agree to a last-minute settlement that the victims found insufficient. This is the most important practical consequence of the lawsuit sale for understanding what happens tomorrow. When the bankruptcy trustee was the plaintiff, there was always the theoretical possibility of a settlement, an arrangement where Erika paid some amount less than $25 million and the case closed. Ronald Richards had been on the record saying settlement talks had broken down completely as of Christmas Eve 2025, and that Erika had little options and was desperately trying to hold off the trial. But as long as the trustee was plaintiff, a settlement remained a legal possibility. LHA Land LLC paid $2 million for a lawsuit that claims $25 million. They are not going to settle for less than what makes their investment return. They are going to trial. Erika's financial position going into tomorrow's trial is one of the most genuinely uncertain pictures in our HOBH history. And that uncertainty is itself part of what makes the case so consequential. She said at the season 15 reunion, when Andy Cohen asked her directly what happens if she loses, "Then maybe I'll have to go bankrupt or fight it in court. I don't know." She said this without visible distress. She said it with the flat effect of someone who has been living with this uncertainty for so long that the framing of it no longer produces acute anxiety. It just produces resignation. She said she was swimming under all of these lawsuits and had been for years. The question of what going bankrupt would actually look like for Erika Jayne is the one that the legal commentators around this case have been most reluctant to answer specifically, because the answer depends on what assets she actually has. She has stated in court documents and public statements that she has limited assets, that the divorce from Tom left her with far less than the lifestyle she had lived on RHOBH suggested. She moved out of the Pasadena mansion, which was part of the bankruptcy estate. She moved into a smaller home. She has the Bravo salary. She has the touring income from her performance dates. She has whatever EJ Global has generated in the post-separation period. Against those assets, a $25 million judgment would represent an obligation she could not pay from current resources, which would presumably lead to the bankruptcy she mentioned at the reunion. The fraudulent conveyance mechanics of the case are why the "I didn't know" defense, while legally relevant to some claims, is not sufficient to defeat the core claim. The core claim is not that Erika committed fraud. It is that she received money that came from a fraudulent source. Under fraudulent conveyance law, even innocent recipients of fraudulently transferred money can be ordered to return it. The jury tomorrow is not being asked to determine whether Erika Jayne is a bad person or whether she knew Tom was stealing. The jury is being asked to determine whether the money EJ Global received was fraudulently conveyed property of the bankruptcy estate and whether she is required to return it. This distinction between criminal knowledge and civil liability under fraudulent conveyance is the thing that Borges and the defense team are most focused on blurring in the jury's mind. Their argument will be that Erika is innocent, that she trusted her husband, that she was devastated by what he did, and that holding an innocent woman responsible for her husband's crimes is unjust. Juries are human beings, and this argument can be emotionally effective even when it is not technically responsive to the legal standard being applied. The trustees, now LHA Land LLC's, counterargument will be equally simple. The money came from Tom Girardi's clients. Those clients are real people. They are widows and accident victims, and the families of people killed in plane crashes. One burn victim was told his $53 million settlement was $7.25 million, and the rest, along with the settlements of many other clients, funded the life that appeared on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. The jury does not need to find that Erika knew. The jury just needs to find that the money went from the victims to EJ Global, which the trustees' accounting documents establish as a matter of documented financial record. There is also the Christopher Psela lawsuit running parallel to this one, which will not be resolved tomorrow, but that adds significant additional legal and financial pressure. Psela is the fashion designer who alleges that Erika, using Tom Girardi's alleged connections to Secret Service agents, had him criminally prosecuted on false fraud charges when he billed her company for legitimate work. He is suing for $18 million. The Ninth Circuit ruled in October 2025 that she could not delay this trial further. A federal court denied her motion to dismiss in February 2024. That case is coming regardless of what happens tomorrow. The RHOBH connection to all of this is the one that the franchise has been most careful about managing. The show has filmed Erika across multiple seasons as she has navigated this case. The Season 12 cast confrontation about the allegations, the Season 13 period when the trial was being prepared, the Season 14 and 15 reunions, she has been consistent across all of it. She did not know. She loved Tom. She was betrayed. She is innocent. At the Season 15 reunion, she said she had been in the Tom Girardi influence, a phrase that generated significant discussion because of its specific and unusual construction. Not under Tom Girardi's control or deceived by Tom Girardi, but in the Tom Girardi influence, as though the relationship were an atmospheric condition rather than a marriage. She said if she could ask Tom one question, it would be, why? Why did you throw me out like that? She has said she walked on ice a lot with Tom. She has acknowledged that the marriage involved dynamics she found difficult and that she experienced something she described obliquely as abuse, a disclosure she made at the reunion without fully specifying its nature or scope. None of those disclosures are legally responsive to the fraudulent conveyance claim. What they are is contextual, information that humanizes her position in a way that may affect a juror's emotional response to the underlying legal question. The question of whether that emotional response is sufficient to overcome the documented financial record is what 12 people in Los Angeles will begin determining tomorrow morning at 8:30. Tom Girardi is in federal prison at 86 years old with a projected release date in 2031 when he will be 92. He will not be in the courtroom tomorrow. He will not testify. He is unavailable as a witness, and his dementia diagnosis, which his defense team introduced at his own sentencing to argue for leniency, makes his participation in civil proceedings even more complicated. The person who could most specifically explain what EJ Global was for, what the payments were intended to accomplish, and what he told Erika about their purpose, is the one person who is not going to be there. What will be there tomorrow is the financial record, the American Express statements, the vendor invoices, the bank transfers, the $14 million in charges Erika made directly to a card issued in her name and billed to a law firm that was simultaneously withholding money from a widow, from a burn victim, from the families of 189 people who died in a plane crash. The record does not require Tom Girardi to explain anything. It explains itself. Ronald Richards, who has been the most persistent and the most public advocate for the victims across 5 years of this case, described the sale of the lawsuit to LHA Land LLC in the simplest possible terms. I've spent 5 years pursuing Erika Jayne to bring justice to the victims of her husband's fraud, he said. This is a step forward. The victims, as of tomorrow morning, have received $2 million from the sale of the right to pursue $25 million more. Whatever a jury decides in the coming days or weeks will determine whether that $25 million ever becomes anything more than a number in a court filing. The widow who wrote that she still feels shame about being easy prey to such sharks has been waiting 5 years for someone to sit in a courtroom and answer for what happened to her. Tomorrow, at 8:30 in the morning, the trial begins. 5 years of delays. A lawsuit sold to a third party for $2 million who has every financial incentive to go all the way. No more continuances by court order. A burn victim told his $53 million settlement was $7.25 million. The families of 189 plane crash victims who never got what they were owed. May 19th, 8:30 a.m. Subscribe for more.